back to the Be Bold Show. Today's conversation is about resilience, the kind that's forged through adversity, accountability, and choosing a new path when everything feels broken. I'm joined by someone I've actually known since high school, which makes this conversation even more meaningful. Michael Bugary and I go way back, and hearing his full story years later has been humbling and also inspiring. Michael is a former Division I and professional baseball player playing for the University of California, Berkeley, and within the Boston Red Sox organization. He is also a recovering addict and brain cancer survivor. Today, he's an author and a motivational speaker helping others navigate adversity and reclaim their lives. And yes, for anyone wondering, we don't just talk about bold women here, bold men exist too. Michael, welcome. I'm really glad you're here having this conversation with us today.
Thank you, Christina. I'm grateful to be here.
So take us back to when baseball was your world.
Yeah.
What did success look like for you back then?
Yeah, so baseball was everything to me. I like to say now that I look back on it, baseball was definitely my first addiction because it became my higher power. Ultimately, it was my identity, so to speak. And I think success for me at that time was to be a major leaguer because I was
Mm-hmm.
full of, I projected this image as a baseball player, as this masculine, and I'm sure you remember this masculine, talented baseball player. Didn't really care what people thought, and I just wanted your attention. And I think, but I was full of insecurity and fear. And I think that if I got to the major leagues, then I would just finally stop feeling that way that I felt about myself, and I would get everything I ever wanted. So my goal was that I wanted all of it, and I wanted to everybody to love me or hate me, but just to know me. That was my biggest thing, and baseball became everything. More than a game, it became who I was or who I thought I wanted to be. Really.
Yeah. It's crazy. We think that if I just get this goal, then it's going to fix all my problems,
Yeah.
and then you get to that goal and you're like, wait, I'm still the same person I was before I even showed up to this.
Yeah.
And when was the turning point for you? What was the thing that started going in the direction of not being healthy, and just kind of spiraling for those dopamine fixes for those things that you were longing for?
Yeah, that is exactly like you said. It's never enough, right? I always had that hole inside me that I filled it up with everything, and everything is that hole. That need is infinite. It never can be fulfilled. And I've had several turning points in my life. I think when I lost baseball, I thought I lost, I thought I lost everything. I thought I lost who I was. I thought I lost any way I had to be great at something. I thought baseball was my best chance to be great at something. That's all I wanted to be. And that's when, when I lost that, I didn't know how to cope, and I didn't know where to turn. And when I was told at 23 years old that I could never throw right again, that baseball was not an actual option for me to play, I didn't know what to do. And that's when I numbed myself with opiates, with painkillers, and other substances. And so that was sort of a turning point into where I shifted to that. And then obviously I've had a few more after that.
So there was an injury, and then the
Yes.
injury, and then
Yes.
so that injury set you back, and then got you onto the addiction of pain medicine and stuff like that,
Yeah.
pain meds and stuff, and so that kind of spiraled into that.
Yes, yes. I mean, I like to say, yeah, that's why I became an addict, right? Because I was pitching for the Red Sox organization, and I had this arm injury, and then I was introduced to opiates. But I mean, that's not necessarily true. It's part of it, but I always had that addictive personality. Like I said, baseball was my first addiction because the source of getting that what I wanted, the attention and validation. And then I
Mm-hmm.
turned to things like alcohol and other things while I was playing, but I always managed to control it as long as baseball was in my life. And so, but without it, I didn't have that higher power anymore, and I didn't care. And yes, that's when I suffered that arm injury and was basically told that it was permanent. That's when I fell deeper into substance abuse, especially with opiates.
Yeah, I think many Americans, especially, suffer with opioid and substance abuse for numbing, and yet they put things in there that make it super addictive and then make it
Yeah.
hard for you to even come off of it. But
Yeah.
then also take me back to when you found out you had the diagnosis of brain cancer, and
Yeah.
what you had to do to overcome that, because that is usually kind of a death sentence for most people. And
Yeah.
so, that's very much something that I would love to have the audience to hear about, resilience and overcoming something so impactful in your life.
Yeah, no, it didn't happen right away. I got my diagnosis right after, pretty much in the height of my addiction, as I involved into some harder drugs, and it all kind of happened in a row. I just started to experience these weird headaches, and the girlfriend I had at the time, thought I was back on drugs again, rightfully so. And so she dropped me off at the emergency room, and I go in, and all of a sudden I realize I have a medulloblastoma brain tumor slightly smaller than a tennis ball in my
Mm.
cerebellum, which is the part of your brain that
Wow.
controls movement and things. And to be honest, when I got that diagnosis, I was indifferent. I didn't have any
Mhm.
spirituality in my life. I lost baseball, and I was just surviving. I wasn't really living. I was just in this constant like up and downs of addiction. I just didn't know what to do without baseball. And so when I got that news, it's like, you know, I didn't like say, hey, God, please help me. I didn't pray. I just knew they were going to give me some good drugs, and I was just like, get on with it. There was no doubt in my mind that I wasn't going to get through it, but I didn't care anymore, and it was just one more thing to add on to it. And I had that woe was me attitude. And it took me several years after that to find that motivation to get through it. But at the time I was just like, you know,
Yeah. What was the actual turning point when you realized, like, hey, I need to make decisions. I need to change. This is life or death. This is my future. This is like, who do I want to be? Like, how do I see Michael like in 10 years from now? Like, what was like that defining moment that changed for you? And what were the actions that you took to be where you are now? Like, what changes did you do in your life? Like, did you have different routines? Did
yeah.
you, what, tell
Yeah,
us.
I think there's like three of them, and they kind of all like mesh together. I think the first and most important was when I just had this moment where I realized what an a-hole I am. What a like selfish jerk that I am. It was the first time in my life where I actually saw myself through the eyes of others. It was a spiritual experience, and I was driving. I had to pull my car over, and I just thought of I just a wave of I got goosebumps now thinking about it, where I just realized it was like, wow, I need to make some changes. And then I got to this point after like a few years after my cancer recovery. This is all around the same time, where the medications that I was on just stopped working for me. The pain medications, I just didn't work anymore, and I got to a point where I was like, I call it a limbo of agony, where it hurt too much to move and it hurt too much to sit still. And so I had to either roll over and die, or I had to make some changes. And around that time too, I got my therapy dog came into my life. So in order for me to keep him and be his handler, I had to like work on myself and get better. So all those things happening. So yes, I started to take personal responsibility for my actions. I think that's the most important thing. I had to accept that all the bad things that happened to me in my life, that they were my fault, and that not approve of it, but I couldn't change it, and I can only do better in the future. And that came with some honesty. And then I had to learn how to manage my pain in a way, because to get outside of myself, if I'm always in pain, I'm only going to think of myself. So I got back into the weight room, and meditation was a big process for me. So I created those routines slowly, and yeah, there's a little bit more to it than that, but yes, my dog definitely helped me a lot in that.
Yeah, I think I've seen your dog in
Yeah,
your
yeah.
stories and stuff. So, like, how do you stay disciplined now? Like, what are the things that you do? Because I know that there's progress and reward and like little bits day by day, which you kind of had mentioned. Like, you started like having meditation into your routine and stuff like that. But how do you stay committed to yourself? Because sometimes I feel like we hit this achievement. Let's say like you're losing weight or something, and you're like, "Oh, I've been doing so good. I'm going to give myself a treat." And then sometimes you kind of like slack on
Yeah.
yourself. Like, what are some of the things that you do to stay disciplined?
That's a great question, and that's something that I talk about a lot too in my book that's out. I have to so there's a big difference for me in discipline and motivation, right? See, I was always
Mm-hmm.
motivated by somebody telling me that I wasn't good enough, or I was always motivated by a pretty girl, or whatever it is that would motivate me
Yeah.
to do something, and inspired me, and I would get that motivation. But just like going on a diet, when I got the results, then I stopped doing that. I stopped doing those things, right? I got comfortable, right? But discipline beats motivation every time, because discipline builds up those small little wins that build my self-worth, right?
Exactly.
So I have to get up early in the morning. What I started out doing for the first couple years, when I decided to go completely sober off everything, I woke up every morning. I got up, exercise, right? Weight room is huge with me. Meditation, huge with me. I probably spent more hours meditating than I have practicing baseball at this point.
Yeah.
Um, uh, then I had to write. I had such an ungrateful person. I had to write 5 things I was grateful for every single day. That was hard at first, and after a while, I would journal, and then I finally got a piano, and then I would start playing my piano, and then I just created this pattern of routines that I would do every single day, and I did it for years,
Hmm.
and I still do the same things now. I have to. It's part of my
Yeah.
recovery, but it's morphed, and it always changes, right? I think
Yeah.
I have to find out what works for me. I think that's there's no like set the principles that works for everybody. Like there's no one diet that works for everybody. You have to find what yours is. And
Yeah.
I'm still in that process. But I do have to do certain things like meditate, exercise, and so on.
Yeah, I think we're always like learning, always growing. Once we feel like we've accomplished one thing, there's another thing, another piece of the puzzle, another test to the testimony that we need to go
Yeah.
to. It's just, it's always a learning process, which makes the world unique and fun sometimes. And sometimes like, why me?
Yeah. Yeah.
But so also, I want to also talk about your book that's coming out, and it's Disease of Me, correct?
Yes.
Who is
Yeah.
this book for? What are some of the things that people can take away from reading this book?
Yeah, so I think the book is for ideally anybody that's going through challenging times. It's a story about me, but it's also a story about other people because, especially with how it works a lot in addictions, it's I find it hard to listen to or get something out of someone who doesn't have a little skin in the game, right? Right.
Yeah.
I want
Hmm.
to hear something that's from somebody that's gone through it. Because I've been in more therapy than I like to admit, right? I've been a
Yeah.
psychologist, I've been in all these things, and most of the time, sometimes I was there to try to get better. Sometimes I was there just to score drugs, whatever it may have been. But I never walked out of a therapist's office like with real hope from the future. But I have walked came away from a documentary or reading a book about somebody with some real hope, right? And a way to and that's what I hope my story does. Hope somebody who's going through a really challenging and hard time, and it's for athletes, promising athletes who want to play their sport at the next level, especially for parents of those athletes. There's a lot of
Hmm.
it's a cautionary tale to a lot of parents about the things about identity and developing into this taking too much putting too much emphasis on your athletic identity. It can be very harmful. It's for addicts recovering. It's for those facing. I was faced with something so rare that my brain cancer and the things that I had to do to overcome it are remarkable. And it's I think it's for everybody in a sense, just to you know it's stories are what connects us, right? It's my story, and I
Yeah.
think that it's I want it to be there for everybody, but it's mostly for those who are just overcoming really hard times.
Yeah. So like two things you had brought up that, reminds me is like our stories are for other people to hear so that we can inspire and help other people. So the walk that you walk through is not only for yourself, but it really is for someone else to hear. And it's like very bold of you to like share your story and open up and be vulnerable to the world about everything that you've been through. And then secondly, it reminds me of like community and
Yeah.
creating that tribe and those people that are going to be there for you, that mentors, other people that have walked your walk. It's important to surround yourself with sometimes like-minded people because those are the ones that are going to help you keep you in that positive state of mind for that optimal, optimistic, life is good recovery. I can accomplish anything that I want. So I really do admire you, stepping out and, writing it out on a book. It's not easy doing that. I published a book too,
Yeah.
self-published, but it
Awesome.
takes a lot
Yeah.
of courage to put yourself out there in a vulnerable state, and to talk about not that they're mistakes, but your lessons, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like to be, yeah.
Yeah. I get really honest in it, and there's a lot of things I said in there that I have put some of them I'm saying for the first time too, and it's a little scary, throwing those things out there. But I just felt like if my motivation was to truly help people, that I had to face those things that a lot of us are afraid to face sometimes within us. Because that's what
Yeah.
it is, a disease of me. It's everything that was caught inside me, and really the only way that I get out of that disease of me is through others, through helping other people.
Yeah.
And that's the only, if there is a cure to it, that's the only cure there is.
Now take me to a point where it was like the actual breaking point. Like what was like the toughest thing for you to go through in your journey to get you through here? What was like your biggest obstacle and how did you overcome it?
Yeah. I think the biggest obstacle for me by far was the side effects to my cancer treatment.
Mm-hmm.
So the the type of the tumor, the surgeries and the stuff in the hospital, that was hard, but it's pain. You can get over it, and even the chemotherapy and the radiation, that was rough. It was just really nasty stuff they gave me because my tumor was so rare. They just the treatment that they gave me, they're just trying to save my life, and they weren't really concerned about side effects to it. So
Yeah.
basically, my brain tumor of the central nervous system. So my whole nervous system was damaged, and
Mm.
so clenching I had this really bad peripheral neuropathy where I could feel every signal starting in my brain, and it would go down through my body. Like if I clenched my fist or I curled my toes, I would get headache, and I would have hypersensitivity and numbness in my feet. It felt like I just had was walking with concrete blocks, and I had no feeling in my front
Wow.
muscles on my shins, and I went from this athlete to to this overnight, and my body wasn't functioning right. I didn't know if I could be with a woman again. I just there's so many things at 27 years
Yeah.
old that I just didn't know how to cope with, and even then I went back into drugs, and I remember a moment so vividly where I just after all this treatment, after I learned I was in remission, I turned back to heroin, and I found myself in my couch just in heroin withdrawal and all these side effects and pains by myself. Everybody had gone away, left me alone because they're tired of dealing with me, and I remember just feeling, is this what rock bottom feels like? And I've had
Mm.
so many of those different moments, but I always just suffered alone, and it's because I was always kept keeping everything inside. But yeah, definitely the side effects of the treatment, because that took me years to fix and to learn how to manage it. And I still probably I'm not I still deal with it now, but I'm just much better at handling it, knowing what to do.
Yeah, you've walked the walk, and if you're able to overcome something when in alone and in your deepest point, like you're unstoppable, you know?
Yeah,
And it's very inspirational because I know many people, even myself, they've always been to that rock bottom and sometimes feel like they can't climb up.
yeah,
But I feel like your story really resonates with people that, like, hey, you could be like rock bottom and you're going to climb up to the top. And that's the determination and the D in bold.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So, so is there anything else that you would like to say to the audience? Anything about your book? How can they get a hold of you? This is your platform to speak your truth.
Yes, my website is michaelbugary.com. Just my full name, no spaces, and then I'm on social medias. On Instagram, it's at mbugary, and then Facebook, Michael Bugary, and my book is available on Amazon. It's called The Disease of Me: How Losing My Professional Baseball Career, Drug Addiction, and Brain Cancer Saved My Life. And in terms of saying, yeah, a few things. I think one thing is it took me. This has been a journey of self discovery, right? Is because what it really comes down to is I was never comfortable with myself, and all of this made me realize is that I've always been good enough, right? That my self-worth has to come from within, right? I have to be myself now at the risk of your approval. That's the most important thing, and that authenticity is I had to pay a price for it, but that's the most important thing to me, is no matter what happens, is that I'm okay with being me, because that's who I have to be with. And the
Mm-hmm.
second thing that I can say is helping other people. With my dog, I mentioned too that we visit the children's hospital and things, and cancer patients, and that's changed my life. Helping other people has completely changed me, and being out there, just giving my time to somebody, right? Because time is the most precious thing that we have, and once I started to do that, that's the only cure that I have for the disease of me, right? So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing how our lives can change just like through a change of perspective, looking things from a different lens. And I'm glad that you wrote the book and it's available on Amazon for people to check out. So, Michael's story reminds us that adversity doesn't ask for permission before it shows up. It doesn't care how talented you are, how strong you look on the outside, or how well you're built your life. But what it does reveal is who you choose to become when everything familiar is stripped away. From the Division One athlete to professional baseball to addiction to brain cancer to rebuilding, Michael Bugary is living proof that resilience isn't loud. It's quiet, it's daily, it's choosing to show up again when it would be easier to just not. And I would love most of this conversation with your hardest seasons are not your identity. They are your training grounds for bravery, optimism, leadership, and determination. That's what bold really looks like in real life. It's not curated, it's not polished, but it's earned. If this episode spoke to you, share it with someone who needs a reminder that their comeback is still possible. And if you want to stay connected with me, grab the links in the show notes, check out my books, and explore the Be Bold Collective. Also, Michael's links are down below as well to check him out. And inside the Be Bold Collective community, we don't just talk about courage, we build it. We surround ourselves with leaders who choose growth over comfort, and we create rooms where bold intelligence, experience, and expansion collide. Because transformation doesn't come from being alone. It happens in community. And I'd love to see you there. Thank you everyone for listening to the Be Bold Show, and see you next time.